this Garlic Marketing Show, we're going to talk about finding the absolute best tech candidates right now for your business, or if you're a candidate, how to actually get the job. And we're going to tell you actually one really easy hack that only 10% of the people do to land these amazing jobs. I've got my great friend Declan Link here. Declan, say hi to everyone.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
And we're going to talk about hiring, AI, where is it going, the changes in the job market, how to take advantage of them. Even though it might seem desperate on both sides, there's huge opportunities. All this on this Garlic Marketing Show, but of course this is brought to you by videocasestory.com. One of the best things you can do with your team members is to collect their stories too. We can help with that. Go to videocasestory.com/finder where we'll help you find those best stories. All right, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about exactly what you do, first of all.
Yeah, I'm involved in the world of technology recruitment. I certainly didn't go to high school and college thinking when I graduated that I would end up in the world of recruitment. You sort of end up in it. And I've been working in the Orlando market, primarily in the Orlando market for 30 years now, helping IT professionals get good new jobs and helping my clients and new clients, when we onboard them, find difficult to find resources.
And well, what did you think you were going to be when you graduated from college? Professional footballer?
Well, like yourself, Ian, I went to Rollins. I did a 3-year, I very fortunately did get a soccer scholarship, which I eternally grateful for. My degree was in international relations, so I was going to be an international businessman, whatever that means. But because I came to the States a little bit later and went to college a little bit later, I ended up getting into sales and marketing to sort of build a US-style resume back in the early 90s after I graduated, and ended up in technology. And to be honest with you, I know enough to be dangerous in technology, but if you put me in front of a laptop or a firewall or a router, it would be terrible. I wouldn't have a clue what to do. My wife probably knows more about technology than me. But I ended up working for a company out of Atlanta where there was a market at the time for end user desktop training when PCs and laptops were turning up on people's desks. And people would, instead of the manual processes, they were having to use WordPerfect and Microsoft Word and Excel and Lotus Notes, if you remember those tools.
Oh yeah, geez, Lotus Notes, I forgot about that one.
So there was a market doing that for a while, and I ended up then getting sort of into the tech world. But once that market sort of went away, it was just really technical training I ended up lucking into, through relationships, because a lot of what you do in life, it's all about who you know.
Yeah.
Getting into a small company in Castleberry that was back in the late to mid 90s, and that company, as we built up to Y2K.com, was acquired 4 different times. The people were the same that worked for the company, but it was 4 different names over that time, and that's how I ended up getting into the world of IT recruitment.
Wow. And what is the key to finding the best people in technology? Because I mean, we were talking about this before, accounting. I mean, you get a CPA or someone has an accounting degree, right? Or accounting experience. A lawyer, they have a bar. There's so many jobs that you can have accreditation for, but tech is changing, obviously, so rapidly, always is. How do you find that person to make sure, A, they have the skill set, but B, they're going to be a good employee?
Well, my model, I started my own company 10 years ago, and my model is probably slightly different from the vast majority of recruitment companies. I've always worked out of the Orlando area, so I have a fantastic network here in the Orlando area. I've got close to 19,000 LinkedIn contacts.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. But they're real. Most of them are real contacts. They're not just people who I've accepted invitations from. But more importantly, because of the way I like to do business, I feel that our value proposition is we're not only matching up the skills, the experience, the education, the certifications, but there's a big part of really successfully finding good resources for companies is trying to match up the cultural fit and to make sure that person is a good fit from a work culture perspective. And as I've been doing this for so long in Orlando, a lot of the people, particularly in the late 90s and early 2000s, that I was helping in those days were recent college graduates who had an inclination towards help desk support, technical support, level 1, level 2, etc., or if they're on the other side of the spectrum, they were programmers, developers, and if I could help them get a job, and they've stayed in Orlando, and they've stayed in touch with me, a lot of these people now, 30 years on, are the CTOs, the CIOs, the VPs of information systems, and it's fantastic because I've been on their journey with them professionally, but also personally, and there's a high level of trust. They know that I'm not just slinging resumes around company vendor management systems. I'm actually trying to match up everything that they're looking for with what our client is looking for, and vice versa.
It's an interesting model, right? Because after 30 years, it's beyond like a database because you just know these people, and you know, it's like matchmaking, isn't it?
Yeah, and also if I I'm engaged by one particular client for a particularly hard skill set, a lot of the time I can reach out to my network and ask them straight, do you know anyone with this type of background? Which is, quite frankly, one, more efficient, but two, it ensures the quality than using some of the commercial job boards like Indeed.com or ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, etc. And you just feel very confident that person, if the timing is right, because what we do in our business, and most technology professionals find this somewhat frustrating when they go to market to find a new job, is they want everything to be scientific and logical, but it's the furthest thing from it. Everything that we do, apart from it being very subjective, is luck, timing, who you know, and sadly it's a bit of a numbers game as well, particularly in the metropolitan areas in Florida, where because of the population shift over the last 8 to 10 years, there's a surplus of people in some of the IT skill sets, and there's a lack of supply in others, which is, to your original question, why human resources a lot of the time, which I look at as a true partner, collaborative relationship, they're not the enemy, I'm not the enemy, we work together. They a lot of the time find very hard to sort of compartmentalize, matrix, and put in a normal org chart for IT people, because technology's always changing, it's pushing the boundaries and ever evolving.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that, like what you said, was so fascinating, because it seems like, and from both sides, that it should be this algorithmic thing, right? And we should just be able to go, well, I need this skill set and this type of person and blah, blah, blah. Let's just fill out a form and we'll match all these people. But it's not, is it?
No. And also, a lot of companies, regular commercial companies, government organizations, a lot of the time they are overwhelmed with candidates. So a lot of what ends up happening if applicants are applying directly to corporate websites, they're finding that their resumes are getting screamed out by the AI simply because of the volume of candidates who are applying for jobs. And I don't know why it happens, but there's always a 10 or 15% of the candidates. It's a very clearly defined job description, and they're a truck driver, or they work in a restaurant, or they do something completely different. And all that does is serve to increase the chances that well-qualified candidates are going to get missed in the shuffle, in the mix.
Yeah. Oh, it is strange, because I've noticed that an increase in just completely obtuse candidates and not the right fit, and then you have the AI candidates like we were talking about that are very obviously not real people or something else. I don't know what, or someone used AI to create their candidates. So what can someone do? Like if I want to get someone who's technologically capable of doing XYZ, this tech job that I have, what can I do to make sure that I am looking for the right person, but can find the right person the fastest?
Are you talking from the company?
The company standpoint. The company standpoint. Yeah.
I mean, I think. I mean, again, there's nothing scientific that guarantees if you do step A, step B, step C that guarantees the end result. But I'm a big believer that they need to use a sort of mixed strategy of, putting jobs out there on the corporate website, putting jobs out there on the for commercial job boards, and then having relationships with a certain number of recruiters that they know have a proven track record, either nationally, regionally, or in a specific metropolitan area, that have the ability to work in partnership and in tandem with the human resources talent acquisition department, and then you'll end up normally getting the best possible candidates.
And when someone comes to you and to make sure that you can get them the best candidate, what kind of preparation should they be doing? In the job description, figuring out what role they want, just even analyzing what they really, really need. Because I know especially if someone's a small to mid-sized company, they try and overhire. I mean, they want someone that's going to do 30 different things.
Yep.
And I'm like, I especially small businesses that I coach and agencies that I coach, I'm like, if someone can do this, you're like, well, I know you can do this, and this. That's why you're an entrepreneur. That's why you start the business. But most people can't and shouldn't be doing everything. So how do you figure out, because tech it's evolving. So it's like maybe they need to do this thing and this thing and this thing. How do you figure out what's the role that you really, really need and make sure that they can give that to you? Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, if you're working for a big corporation, a lot of the time, if you're working in the IT enterprise, in the IT department, you have to sort of accept that you're going to have more of a silo type of role, because again, there's a large typical enterprise with a CIO downwards to all the different departments. Whereas, it depends also, if where that person is in their career. If they go to a smaller company, a mid-sized company, a startup type of company, by definition, they're going to have to wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting in this cycle that we're in currently, and I've seen the ups and downs and the different cycles over the 30 years I've been doing this. This is when there's a lot of people perceived to be hitting the streets because of what's going on in Washington, D.C., the government workers losing their jobs, commercial workers working for commercial companies on government contracts losing their jobs. What tends to happen with the job descriptions that come from clients in general, but definitely some of my great clients, is they try and get away with putting what used to be 2 or 3 jobs into one job description. And then trying to get away with getting one person, paying them for one salary, but they really want as many of the attributes as possible because they figure that they can take advantage of the marketplace. And in a cycle like that, you see companies either intentionally or accidentally taking advantage of the situation. Because the cycle we're in right now, I mean, I look at the year, a normal calendar year, the best time to be looking for a job if you've been caught in a reduction in force, if you're actively unhappy at your job, or if you're looking for a patch of new green grass, because I think every IT professional should move every 4 to 7 years and take your career by the scruff of your neck. Normally, the first 2 to 3 weeks of a calendar year, there's a lot of eager anticipation, but there's a little bit of a hangover after the holidays because if companies working off a calendar fiscal year, new projects are kicking off, new headcounts being added, those people who have had their New Year's intentions to move on to a new job, normally the first 3 weeks, nothing really happens, even though there's a lot of eager anticipation. Once you get into the Martin Luther King holiday time period, through until Memorial Day, is the best time of the year to be looking for a new position, in my humble opinion. Because in the summer months, then it gets to be a bit streaky, people on vacation, kids finish school, university students come back. Before you know it, July the 4th is upon us. And then before you know it, the kids are going back to school, university students going back, and then you go into the second best time of the year, which is post-Labor Day until the second week in November. That is, in theory, every year what happens. The problem is we've had a bit of a wobble in the last 3 to 4 weeks because of the tariffs and all the uncertainty, and that's tended to make a lot of companies put their foot on the brakes to analyze and see what's going on. So sadly, one of my biggest frustrations with the current market is I know lots of really, really good people who just want to get back to work, get paid competitively, have a challenging job, have work-life balance, have a good company culture, and they just can't find the jobs at the moment.
Wow. And I mean, always when there's shifts, there's opportunity. What do you see as the opportunity for businesses, and what do you see as the opportunity for job seekers right now?
The opportunity for job seekers is, the number of times I've been told I've never had to go looking for a job in my life. Jobs have always come to me, or I've known people. If I had a dime for every time someone's told me that, I'd be as rich as yourself, I am.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, the typical IT career is what I would call a fundamentally fragile career.
Yeah.
It's not like being a CPA. It's not like being a lawyer where, you get the education, you get the certifications, and then typically you're going to stay with one firm for most of your career, if not all of your career. Technology, because of the boundaries it's constantly pushing, it's a fundamentally fragile sector, and people lose their jobs more often. So for the candidates, I would advise them, or not just candidates, but people who are working in jobs, always have a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. Don't ever take your job for granted. And if you are what I call a free agent and you're between jobs, use it as an opportunity. Turn it into a positive to say, what do I need to do to rebrand myself, to go off on a different tangent? It happened back in the early 90s. There was a strong market for mid-range computing around the country, and here in Orlando, particularly up in the Lake Mary Heathrow area, with AS400, RPG, RP4. Suddenly that market disappeared overnight. Probably over the last 10 years or so, there was a lot of people who were working as system administrators in a traditional data center. But the minute the cloud came along, there was a lot of early adopters, there was a lot of issues regarding security, but now everyone seems to have adopted the cloud. So those administrators in the Orlando market, system administrators, who had, probably were making between $70,000 and $90,000 a year, they had to completely rechange their career path because of the market conditions, and they needed to get into cybersecurity, they needed to get into DevOps, or they needed to become a system admin with a cloud company that does, like AWS or Microsoft Azure or the Google equivalent.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, but obviously now what's even more different is how vastly open all the information and all the skill sets are. You don't have to go back to school to absorb a new skill set anymore, do you?
No, and school in getting a degree in the computer world. I mean, it's good to have a degree.
Yeah.
However, unless you have designs to get up into the higher echelons of an IT department as a director, as a VP, or as a C-level person, typically the actual practical experience trumps education.
100%.
Whereas obviously if you're in a more traditional professional discipline, you have to have an undergrad, and quite frankly in this day and age, you probably have to have a master's or an MBA.
Yeah. It's so interesting because of that dichotomy of going to school and do you need to go to school, and like we were talking about at the beginning of it, that you went to school and really, I mean, I think the biggest thing we probably learned it, like me at Rollins, was relationships, right? And how to handle different people and different sets of people. It's an unusual school, so it's like we had to learn that. But now from the business owner standpoint, what, obviously, we're coming out of like the pandemic when no one could find anyone to now it seems like there's going to be a lot more people. People are like, well, I like you said, they're making the mistake of trying to like put three into one. Where's the opportunity there? I mean, besides just hiring people, hiring good people, where do you see the opportunity for like a business in absorbing a workforce?
I mean, I think it's an opportunity for businesses to get the highest quality caliber people. The problem a lot of the time I see is in any given market in the United States is that there isn't a right or wrong necessarily from a compensation perspective. And a lot of times you'll find companies going to market and they're not actually aware of what the supply and demand scenario is. And as a result, I hate using this analogy, but it's like going to the Mercedes or Cadillac dealership, and you can test drive, you can touch, feel, imagine yourself driving the Mercedes or Cadillac. But if you've only got the money for a Subaru or a Honda, they're not going to sell you that car.
No.
And it's the same thing. A lot of the time, when recruiters are brought in, a lot of the time, there's the reason that they're brought in is they're struggling to fill a position. And normally, there's four reasons why a company struggles to find a position. One, it's their reputation, and the reputation of most companies is very good. Two, it's they're in a terrible geographic location. Or three, Three, that they're not paying what the market is should be paying, and they're trying to get away with being cheap. And then four, obviously the whole factor nowadays of working remote, working hybrid, working 40 hours on site is a major factor in the particularly in the tech sector, because a lot of companies are in the last 18 months or so, particularly in the Orlando market, are trying to enforcing that their employees move back into the office on a hybrid basis, or a lot of the time on a fully remote basis. And a lot of that time is the reasoning is that they're committed to a long-term commercial spend on commercial real estate, and it's not a good look when the executives drive in and they've got a parking lot for 500 people and there's 20 cars in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's corporate mandates from regional companies, national companies, international companies that don't make sense on a local level. Because I've had many people in the last 18 months or so, as the pandemic moved off into the background, who were working virtually 100% remotely, and they would be in one end of Orlando, and then a corporate mandate came out and they had to drive an hour and a quarter to be physically in the office in the other end of Orlando 5 days a week. So you can imagine that's an hour and a half each day, 5 days a week, that they're not going to account for. And as a result, there has been attrition, there has been pushback, and there have been people moving jobs from one company to another, because it really doesn't make sense a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, because that shifts your quality of life. And because I think that's, it's an opportunity to really step up and not go take advantage of it, but really take care of your people and go, hey, and hopefully they remember that, because it, like I said, it's a cycle. It's going to change.
Yes.
But then we have this thing with AI. Where do you see AI right now going, and what do you think the biggest mistakes people are making, businesses especially, are making with AI?
I think AI is very, very prevalent within corporate HR web portals. And a lot of it has a good reason, because the AI is being used to screen out the volume of candidates, because they just can't. A traditional human resource generalist or an internal talent acquisition professional just doesn't have the bandwidth to look through thousands of resumes or use some type of keyword tracking software that they still use, but they have traditionally used. So good candidates are missing out. But ultimately, what the goal is for someone in human resources talent acquisition to get to a manageable list of as highly qualified candidates as possible, and to present them to the hiring manager or to start the interview process. So I think it's a blessing. At the moment, it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, because I do know candidates who get so frustrated because they see what they perceive as the perfect job on a corporate website or on a commercial job board, and they never hear back anything. They never hear back. And then over time, if they're not feeling the love, they start losing faith in what their value proposition is. They start questioning their resume. They start, over time, not believing that they have a proper value proposition to be hired. And that's really frustrating when you look at it from my vantage point, because, as I say to them all the time, I live here in Orlando. I sound like Harry Potter. I'm not Harry Potter, as you can see. I don't have a magic wand, but I would love to be able to positively impact these good people who are being impacted and can't even get in the door to have to get an interview, to get FaceTime, to have a video interview, to speak with someone who has the money, the authority, and the need to hire them. So I tell absolutely everyone, and I try and help out, not for any financial reason. There's no benefit to me, but I try and tell people all the time, you have to try and, within reason, as long as it's true and accurate, you've got to try and customize your resume to what the job description is speaking to. Once you've clicked the send button, then you've got to find someone on the inside of the company who can become that advocate, that cheerleader, that sponsor for you. Because otherwise, you're filling out an online application, you're clicking the send button, and you're effectively sitting at home with your fingers crossed saying, I hope they call me back. And in those particular circumstances, time is your enemy. If you don't hear back anything, every day that goes by, there's a reason why you haven't been selected for an interview.
And they have to market themselves to the job.
Yes. And there are companies out there. I know a gentleman who was a CIO who was in transition, who lives in Jacksonville area, who, whilst he was interviewing, he's now got a job, he developed on the side a whole web-based program to be able to very efficiently customize resumes for candidates. And it's become a revenue producer for him on the side. And I'm
awesome.
sure that's mirrored out there by many, many people.
Yeah.
Very, very high-tech people. So he's turned a negative when he lost his job as a CIO. He was on the market, for about 8 months or so. And now he's back doing his normal job, but the technology that he built is providing him with a great monthly income.
Yeah. Well, and also it shows employers. I mean, I know, like, if someone makes an effort and knows about the business, right, and spends just a little bit of extra time, they stand out.
Yes.
Like, versus the person that, like we were talking about, it's like a truck driver wanting the job, and I have no idea why the truck driver is applying for this tech job. It's crucial, and I think, it's like you said, it's waves, because people on that side are now having to market to the, whereas employers were like, I just want people, and like 3 years ago, right? It's like, I just need someone in here.
Yeah. But from a candidate perspective, looking at the other side, you've also got to make sure that candidate is doing their utmost to make sure that there's not a reason why that company shouldn't hire you. And I sort of think I've seen it all over the years. Before the pandemic, because I'm a small boutique company and I work, as they say in the business, both sides of the desk, I always make sure I meet people, because there's that personal connection. I used to keep the Starbucks and the Paneras of Central Florida in business. Now, because Zoom and Teams and other video mediums are so beneficial and allow you to work so much more efficiently, I do a lot of video screenings. However, I see people who do video calls as I'm prepping them, and they're sitting there with kids running around in the background. They're answering a mobile telephone call in the middle of the conversation. They are not dressed appropriately. They're doing it in a bedroom with the bed unmade. They're sitting there with their puppy dog on their lap, stroking their puppy dog whilst they're talking. There's a lady, I'll give her a little name plug, Lily Espinoza, who works for Lee Hecht Harrison, which is one of the big national outplacement firms. We were on a joint call interviewing a candidate in the fall of last year, and I could not believe it. This gentleman, who was a high-level executive type person, talked to us both on the Zoom call whilst he was working out on his elliptical.
What?
Oh my God. I've seen people go into interviews who were, 15, 20 years of experience chewing bubblegum. I don't think it's my place to tell them, you need to, a grown man or lady, you take the bubblegum out. But I've sort of seen it all. So my point is, candidates themselves need to do proper due diligence. They need to prepare themselves extensively with regards to the corporate website, the job description, using LinkedIn to find out if they know anyone on the inside, etc., etc., etc. Have questions prepared beforehand, and to follow. This is the $1 million thing. Probably 90% of people don't ever send a thank you email or thank you note. I don't train people to do that, because that 10% that do, I think they should be rewarded, because that's just what they do. Everyone, if you take time out of someone's schedule for an interview, should, in my opinion, send some type of thank you.
Yes. It's amazing how easily and how that stands out, and how few people do that. Like, everyone wants that little hack, and that's so simple, and it's being a person. And like, as far as building, like, where do you see the AI skill set going for people? Like, and how are they going to have to absorb it? Because it feels like everyone's going to have to know AI in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who are jumping on the bandwagon. I'm talking about corporations, marketing, pivoting, changing their whole, what their value premise is to try and, get some advantage of AI in whatever form. Again, being not probably technical enough to really understand the inner workings of AI. There's no question it's going to impact us in the future. I look at my small business, which I've had for 10 years now, and like I said beforehand, I think there's always going to be a place for small companies like mine or big companies that have that personal touch, simply because I think AI can do a fantastic job from screening, from reducing the volume, but I can't really get my head around how they're going to be able to match up things such as the personal touch, is this person going to be a cultural fit? Are they going to, what's their personality like? Are they an individual contributor? Are they going to be a team member who's prepared to share knowledge and time to train up younger people? Is this person has the ability to become a mentor within the organization? I can't get my head around how AI is going to take care of those tangibles and intangibles. But it's definitely here presently, and it's definitely here to stay as well. My younger brother, who's was a lawyer in London, he's fascinated by AI. He's retired now, but he's always trying to get his head around how it's going to affect his profession, the legal profession, how it's going to affect accounting, and he asks me on a regular basis how it can impact my lifestyle. But fortunately, despite my younger looks, I'd probably be retired by the time it actually fully impacts our life.
Yeah, no, I think the human touch and the relationships, and this is what I've been saying a lot, it's going to become more important. And because, the volume of stuff that AI can throw at us, we now need the human factor to sort through it, right?
Yes.
And because we were talking about even on the content side on LinkedIn, my friend who owns a SaaS company down, Chad Rubin, great episode. He was talking how he spent time on LinkedIn. He stopped spending time on LinkedIn because there's so much information that is very obviously AI and it's hard to sift through. And now he's spending more time with people. And I think it's actually going to push back the human relationship that Zoom kind of took away.
Yeah. I'm certainly hoping that is, because that's my value proposition in many respects. Like I said earlier on, people trust me because they know I'm going to do the right thing for them and I'm going to do the right thing for my clients. And I'm not going to be just spraying resumes around company web portals. And at the same time, I'm not going to waste my client's valuable time or the candidate's valuable time by giving them false hope. If they're not a candidate for a position, they're not going to be presented for that position. Yeah. And we have a whole checklist of due diligence we do before we even present a candidate to a client.
That's amazing. So Declan, if someone does need to hire someone, obviously you do local, but people around the country, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably the best way to get hold of me is through LinkedIn. All right. I was introduced to LinkedIn. I was a very early adopter, probably a year or so after LinkedIn came out. And it was with a VP of Information Systems from one of my clients in downtown Orlando that I've been working with for 30 years. Again, I couldn't get my head around what the value of it was at the time. But over time, I have really seen how valuable it is and what a good way it is despite some of the, I'll have people, try and become my friend. And it's obviously there's some scam or it's AI or whatever. But I've found that that's a lot of the time the best way to LinkedIn. If you're a candidate, it's like a billboard on the interstate. Come and get me. But you can also find out, like if you're a candidate and you're preparing for an interview, you can see who in your network might be working in that particular company. So from a communication perspective, LinkedIn is probably the best way to get hold of me.
Awesome. And since we talk LinkedIn, this is a marketing show. From an employer standpoint, to attract the absolute best talents, what are the things that they should be doing on LinkedIn?
The candidates.
The employers, the companies.
I think, I'm sure most of the companies we work with, and we work with some rather large national companies. We work with a lot of local companies, particularly mid-tier or startup, fintech or health tech type companies. A lot of the time, their human resources and talent acquisition departments are very, very good and use multiple tools to find the best possible candidates. a lot of the time they're utilizing the services of a third-party recruiter because either it's a very specific, unique niche skill set, or at that particular given time they're having a lot of hiring going on, they don't have the bandwidth. But if all things are normal, I think the talent acquisition HR people are utilizing LinkedIn as one of their various tools to try and identify and source the best people.
And how can they make them sure that they look the best to those people? What do you see? Are candidates judging the companies based on their LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, the companies are definitely monitoring LinkedIn. So if someone listening to this podcast suddenly feels energized and wants to go out there and get a new job, if suddenly you're adding 100 new friends in the space of a week on LinkedIn, you're darn sure that human resources or your boss is going to see that. So you have to be strategic about it. But if you do nothing and you've just made a decision that you're going to look for a new job, obviously nothing's going to change. So it comes down to an individual's risk tolerance. But when all is said and done, I think LinkedIn is a very, very good tool, and I've certainly benefited from it both ways.
Awesome. So we'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Declan Link, thank you so much for being on the Garlic Marketing Show.
My pleasure, Ian. Really good. Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you all for taking Declan and I on your journey. This has been Ian Garlic and the Garlic Marketing Show.